Okay, hello everyone. It's day 2 of Macmillan Spring Conference. Please find your chat boxes and if it is comfortable for you, type in the chat box where you are joining to us from and whether you see and hear my voice and see the picture of two of us. There are very few moments before the start. Okay, Nizhyn, Odessa, Shanghai.
Wow.
Wow.
Finland.
Finland, Vinnytsia, Черкассы, Lutsk is here, Kiev, Vishneva is here, Dnipro, Kharkiv, Chernivtsi, Poltava, Kherson, again Черкассы, again Kiev, Zhytomyr, Odessa, Dnipro, Uzhgorod, Kirovograd, Kryvyi Rih, Lviv, Ternopil, again Lviv, Lutsk. Well, very fast moving this chat
Yeah.
box.
Athens.
Ternopil, Odessa, Novovolynsk, Athens, Kharkiv, Cherkasy, Vinnytsia, Zhovti Vody, Vishneva, again Rivne. Hello, hello, Chernivtsi, Zhytomyr, Odessa, Ireland. Well, we have an amazing geography, not only the
Yes.
geography of Ukraine, but also the geography of the globe. So it's 3 p.m. Kiev time and high time to start. It's Macmillan Education Ukraine, and it is day 2 of our spring conference. And before the start, I would like to make 3 very important announcements. The first very important announcement is that if there is an air raid signal in the place where you are now, please make sure you are in the safe place, because your safety is first and foremost. And this leads me to the second announcement, that this conference is being recorded. So you will be able to receive the recording and watch again anytime you want. And the third important announcement is that surely you will receive the certificate of as a participant within 3 working days. So it won't happen today. And at this very moment, I have great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, first presenter, first guest, Dr. Monika Chechminska, who is talking to our teachers for the first time, and I hope it will be a very successful start. And first but not the last and not the least, Monika, the audience is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much for this lovely introduction. Well, hello everyone. This is amazing. There are almost 400 people here. Can you hear me? Can you see me well? All right, if you could just say hello. Yes, okay. Great. This is amazing. As my friend said, it's amazing to see people from so many different places, not just Ukraine. And I'm really privileged to be here and to be able to talk to, and I hope it will be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Okay, so I'm going to start the slides. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about how to develop higher order thinking skills with your teenagers. And first of all, if I just say a couple of words about myself. I've been a teacher for a long time. And I work at university in Olsztyn, which is northeastern part of Poland. I am also a teacher in secondary school. So I missed the real teaching, not just working at university. So I came back to school a couple of years ago. So now I'm a happy teacher in a secondary school. And I just wanted to say on a more sort of private note that originally I come from Suwałki. So those of you who know where it is, so I'm very close. My family home is very close to the border, and I really like those regions of Poland near the eastern border, and I hope that I will be able to come, I will have a chance and the privilege to come and meet you all in person in the near future and to visit your beautiful country. Okay. So let me just organize the chat. I will try to follow the chat, but you know that it's not very easy to sort of synchronize everything. But if you have any questions or if you've got any comments, I will try to address them. Okay, before I go on, I wanted to show you a slide with 3 different activities, okay? And in this way, I will also introduce my family to you. You will not see their faces. So picture A is my husband, who is practicing kite surfing, you know, the sport, yeah, with a funny sport with a board and a kite. In the middle is my son, who is, as you can see, he's playing the piano. He attends the music school. And on the right-hand side it's me during a conference in Poland. And I have a question to you. If you feel like you are good at any of these things, that is windsurfing, kite surfing, or sailing, can you please put A in the chat box? If you can play any musical instrument, whether it's the, you know, the piano or whatever, can you put B, right? And if you think you are a good teacher trainer, or you think you are a very good teacher, can you put C? So I can see, you know, how many, all right. So I see lots of people who play musical instruments. B plus C, brilliant. And some people who think they're good teachers and good, I think you are all good teachers because you're all here. Okay, all right, thanks. Thank you for your contribution. There's quite a lot of people here. The answers are coming in really fast. Okay, so if you play any musical instrument, or if you practice a sport like windsurfing or kite surfing or any other sport for that matter, you know that it's kind of difficult to learn, right? And it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of organized effort, I would say. And this is what I would like you to think about for a moment before I go on and give you some practical ideas on how to deal with this particular area. When we think about language learning, all right, we think about progress that is like, you know, traveling along a certain path. And if you look at this meme on the on the left-hand side, yes, you will see that we sort of think, or our students rather think, that it's all going to be plain and smooth sailing, you know, kind of smooth and predictable. And we as teachers know that language learning is nothing like that, right? That it's never plain and smooth. There are some unexpected difficulties and students get into problems. There are sometimes grammatical problems they don't get, or they are not very good at phonetics, and so on and so on and so on. No matter what language you're learning, it's never that simple. And the thing is that whenever we think about making progress, we usually put it as a straight line, right? So we go from the left to the right, from the past to the future, we look ahead. And this is very often how we imagine making progress, whether we are talking about learning a language, playing a musical instrument, doing a sport, or becoming a presenter on stage, or becoming a teacher. So we often think that when it comes to making progress in language learning, we often think that when we know more language, when we know more words and more grammar, we will become better users of English. Okay, so you know a lot of words, you will become a better speaker and a better writer. You will know more grammar, you will become a better user, right? A better speaker and a better writer. Unfortunately, as some of you would probably agree, it's not always the case, right? And you can drill and teach a lot of new words, and you can give your students grammar rules, but it doesn't mean that they will become necessarily good users in terms of communication. And I would like to come back to the example of a musical instrument, and I wonder whether you agree with me. When my son was here, he was 7, maybe, or 8, what he started with very simple melodies. Yes, things like la 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 blah, blah, blah. Okay, so very, very simple melodies. And of course, when he was, growing up and he was learning, as I said, he still is, he has been learning in a music school. But, then in grade 2 and grade 4, he learned more notes, right? And he also got to play longer pieces, but these pieces were not only longer, but they were also much more complicated. Okay, so right now, like last year, for example, in his final exam, he played Chopin, but from the boy who was 6 or 7 to Chopin took many years, but the progress, really, when you play a musical instrument, is not just learning more notes. The thing is that you have to play pieces which are more and more complex, more and more complicated. All right, you start from very simple pieces, and then you go and develop and grow and practice and practice and practice. Those of you who play musical instruments, or if you have got children or students who play musical instruments, you know how much hard work it takes. But you start from very simple things, okay? And what I'm trying to say here is that progress in learning a language is not only knowing more language, okay? But it's also using this language in more and more complex tasks, okay? So this is what I'm going to tell you, and I will show you in real examples how how I do it with my students and how it can be done when it comes to teaching vocabulary, grammar, and also reading and writing a little bit. So we need to go in those two directions, right? To give our students new words and new grammatical structures, which is obvious, okay? But they should also be given a chance and an opportunity to practice this language, not only in very simple tasks, because they will never play Chopin, yes? Which means if they just produce very simple chunks of language, if they play Kahoot all the time, they will never be able to write an essay, for example, right? Or speak at a slightly more advanced level. So this is my agenda, all right? So this is the plan for this webinar. I've got 15 minutes left. So I'm going to define and describe higher order learning skills. Don't worry, this is going to take a moment only, not much theory. And then I'm going to explain why these higher order learning skills are useful. And they are useful because we make progress faster and better. And then, of course, I will give you quite a lot of practical ideas, right? Of how you can actually use your course book and what you can do with the material which you already have in the book and how you can use it again and again. Okay, so first, higher order learning skills. In general, when we think about teaching and learning anything, we say, specialists, cognitive psychologists say that skills can be of the lower order and higher order. So we start at the bottom. Yes, we start from the lower order thinking skills, which means that we need some solid knowledge. Okay, we need to remember new words, new grammar, and to understand. Okay, and so just to give you an example, I won't be able to talk about last holidays if I don't know irregular verbs in English. Okay, so I need to have the solid knowledge of those so that the students, if the students want to talk to me about their last holidays, they can't say I goed or I taked, which unfortunately they sometimes do. So they need to have this solid base, solid knowledge. In the case of English, of course, or any other language, it's going to be knowing a lot of vocabulary, knowing phonetics, how to pronounce sounds, and also how to understand, okay, how to match different things. But language is also about higher order thinking skills. This is when you are, when you analyze the language. For example, you compare two grammatical structures or two words, how they are formed. When you can evaluate whether something is correct or not correct, right? And you can apply this knowledge in some new situations. So lower order thinking skills would be students repeating a dialogue from a book. Okay, but if they can produce a dialogue on their own, this is obviously much more productive, much more creative, right? They need to think more. So what cognitive psychologists and other psychologists came up with, they came with this taxonomy, and the author of the taxonomy was Bloom, which I'm sure you may have heard about. So you've got those lower order skills, higher order skills, and you've got those different colors. So remembering, understanding, applying, and so on and so on. And to maybe make it a little bit simpler and more creative, I also put some, excuse me, okay, I have to go back. I also put some verbs on the right-hand side, the so-called operational verbs. So when you, for example, when you have a write or plan or a design, this is creating. This is, you know, the most creative task you can come up with for your students' sake. But if it is just definition or matching or underlining, this is the very bottom, so remembering. Of course, it is important to remember that you have to start at the bottom. Okay, that without knowing, without having this knowledge base, solid knowledge base, it will be difficult to analyze anything or to create anything. So our students first need to know some vocabulary, and they need to be able to recognize it, some grammatical structures, and so on and so on. Why is this important? Okay, and I'll show you an example of something that I did with my third grade students, secondary school. So 1 year before their final exams, not a very good group, just you know, a group of boys only, because they are in this mathematical IT class. Okay, and of course they easily get bored, and so I thought that to enhance remembering and to maybe give them some fun, I would use some games to revise vocabulary. All right, I'm not a big fan of Kahoot. I don't know why, personally. I know that some teachers love it. But because I teach in secondary school, I don't use it that often. I like Gimkit, all right? So it's here, all right? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's very funny, very nice, I think. And the students earn money, for example, so they like it. But this is a very simple platform, right? So what you can do is you can you can organize, let's say, a very quick and funny revision of vocabulary. All right. So, for example, you can add images. So, what does every person have to do to survive? Breathe. What's this? Multiplication. What's this? I think it was a fossil. Zdobyć uznanie, to gain recognition. So I gave them some translations and so on and so on. And they loved it. And they told me that we remember all the words from this unit. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, because this revision with Gimkit, we did it twice. They liked the game a lot. And they really, really sort of loved it. And then I thought, okay, so let's see how good they are. And yesterday I told them, all right, let's do one final revision before a test. And this is what I gave them, all right? So I gave them like 20 sentences, all right, in which these particular words were used. But these were different sentences from the ones that I had in my course book. So here, all the new words appeared in slightly different contexts. Okay, and mind you, I wasn't that smart. Some of these sentences were written with the help of ChatGPT, which I sometimes use to do it for me. And my students know it as well. And do you know what happened? They were like, but teacher, this is a very difficult exercise. And I said, why? Because we need to think. And they said, well, we need to think, and we need to spend a lot of time trying to understand the sentence and then trying to remember which of these words can be used in this particular context. Can you see the problem? So if we just play Gimkit or Kahoot or any other game, Quizlet with the students, and they work a lot of the time with single words, or even in words with some simple contexts, it may be difficult for them to apply these words in longer sentences, in longer texts, not to mention to use these words or phrases in speaking and in writing. So I hope that that you agree and that you can see the sense, yes, the point of it. So do you know what my students said at the end of this activity? They said, teacher, games are nice, but I think you should give us more of this kind of activities because they are so difficult. And I thought, wow, success. I managed to convince my students that thinking is good and useful. Well, they are 17, so I think it's high time they realized it. So this is what I often do with the students. I show them, see, we can play games. We can play Kahoot, we can play Gimkit, but you need to be able to use these words and these phrases and the grammatical structures, and you will never learn to use these if you do not practice longer sentences, more complex tasks. And of course, you will never pass the school leaving exam, yes? Which is another story, obviously. I don't know whether you prepare your students for exams, but well, that's it. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of how these higher order skills work and also how nicely they are sometimes used in course books, because I'm not saying that you have to do all the work. What I'm trying to say is that you, having the course book that you have, and I'm going to use Gateway to the World, but also Get Involved, which is the book which I used in a private language school for a while, and I liked it as well. Just a few examples. The rest of the examples will be from the Gateway to the World, which I think some of you use. But it doesn't matter what the book is. What matters is that I will show you how you can use the material in the course book to actually make your students maybe work a little bit harder. Because if they work harder, they have to think, they will remember better, and they will make more progress. Okay, so this is like a typical unit about clothes. All right, so you've got people dressed up in different clothes, and there are different activities. So let's have a look at these activities. So these are the typical activities from this first level, the bottom level. Okay, so the students have to remember, recognize, and match. Very simple activities. Yes, the students have no problem doing that because it's very simple. It doesn't require a lot of processing, a lot of thinking. This one is a slightly more difficult in terms of cognitive skills, because here you need to be able to understand a little more, to identify and to see groups. So as you can see, you've got match each body part, all right, with the words in bold from exercise 2. So you have to put those different items of clothing into different categories, into different groups. So which of them you wear on your head and neck, which on the legs, and so on and so on. And here already you have a little bit of understanding and identifying, right? So this exercise is slightly more difficult. That's why it's number 3. And then number 5, the one of the last exercises on the page is apply. Okay, so here, as you can see, the students do not yet make their own sentences, but they use this vocabulary in the sentences which are given in the course book. Okay, and of course, the next level would be for the students to use this vocabulary in their own sentences. Okay, so I hope that it is clear what those higher order learning skills are. Yes, that are lower level, higher, but we have to start from the lower level. So remembering, understanding, for our students to be able to use their higher order learning skills. All right, why are they useful? But first of all, for linguistic development, okay? Which means that students will not get bored because we will give them a wide variety of tasks, not just matching and filling in. Also, they will be revising the same vocabulary and the same grammar many, many times in different activities. So they will be revising and recycling the same words in different activities, as I will show you in a moment. But also, using HOTS is good for the students' cognitive development, right? For their brains developing. The lessons become more engaging, all right? Because the more you need to think, the more engaged you become. And of course, they make students think more. And the students also become better at, problem solving, creative thinking, and so on and so on. So linguistic development is one thing, but this cognitive development, the thinking, is another side of the coin, right? Of this progress. All right, so let's have a look at how exactly this could be done, and also how useful this could be. Again, here we have a vocabulary section. This is from Gateway to the World A2. And this is the beginning of the lesson. Match some of these phrases to the photos. Here you've got housework, all kinds of household chores. So you've got pictures, and of course, students match. You can practice the pronunciation, yes, so that they would know how to pronounce those words. And have a look then. In exercise 2 already, we have an exercise which is not matching anymore. This is an exercise in which you need to think. I mean, the students need to think which jobs are easy, which are difficult, which are important, which do you like doing, which do you hate doing, and which people do every day. So here already we have got identification, categorization, but also this vocabulary is personalized, which is also important, isn't it? If the students won't use vocabulary and grammar in personalized context, they will never learn it, or not really very well. So this is a simple exercise, but it does a beautiful job. And this is one of my favorite kinds of activities. So what I'm going to do is, on some slides, you will see 3, 4, 5, or 6, or 7 different activities, which I came up with to practice this particular language, but which are not given in the course book. And they are going to go from the bottom to the top. Yeah? So from the simplest to the more difficult ones. Categorize. This is a very simple and a very useful activity, because what you do is you ask the students to put the activities into 3 categories. But if you want your students to be even more creative, you tell them, okay, you know what? You come up with your categories. I'm not going to tell you what categories you need to use. So what I'm going to show you in a moment, I will go back to this slide. Don't worry, no, not yet. Okay, I will come up, this slide will come in a moment. I will show you the categories that my students actually came up with. Yeah. So here, what categories could these be? For example, in which places at home do you do these activities? How frequently? So which of them do you do every day? Once a week, once a month? Complexity. Which is more complex for you, to lay the table or to dust the furniture? Okay. Length. How long does it take you? Which take short time, sort of middle, and which take the longest? Okay. And the funny thing about this activity, I don't know if you ever do it. The funny thing about this activity is that the students like doing it, and they like it because there are no correct answers. Whichever way they come up with is okay, as long as they have their own ideas, as long as they make sense to them. I don't know if this is clear to you, and you can see the beauty of this exercise, right? It's a very, very simple activity, and you can do it with any vocabulary group, right? The second activity which you can do with any vocabulary group is prioritize. Prioritize is like putting the activities in the order. Okay, so for example, you can tell them, all right, so can you work in pairs and put these everyday activities in the order from the most tiring to the least tiring? And they also have totally different answers, which is okay. and brilliant. So for example, I say, you know, if you asked me, I would say the most tiring for me is vacuuming the floor. I just hate it. And they say, no, vacuuming is not so bad, you know. Maybe dusting is the worst, or I don't know, tidying up. Fine. What happens here in those two activities, they feel very simple, but the students revise the vocabulary, but they already need to put some thinking. They need to make some decisions. All right, which is more important, which is less important. So there's quite a lot of processing, yes? And also when they work in pairs, they may disagree. Finally, what you can also do is you can tell the students, all right, design a spring cleanup for your family. So if your family consists of 4 people, think of who is going to do what and how long it's going to take them. All right, so this is, you know, this is a totally different activity, right? So it's not prioritizing, categorizing. And once you start thinking in a similar way, you will see how easy it is to become, you know, how easy it is to create activities like that, right? So you have the course book, you have the words, and you try and think how you can use the same vocabulary set in different activities, from the easiest to the more difficult ones. All right, so this is just one example. Okay, I think you could easily put all the activities in the world in this diagram. Okay, so those which are cognitively demanding, so you need to think, and those which are affectively engaging, means that students are interested and they are emotionally vested. Yeah, they invest because it's about important things or it's about themselves. So of course, the best activities are here. Yes. So those which are cognitively demanding, because your brain works, cognitive development, and those which are not demanding and are boring will be much more easily forgotten by the students, right? If your students are active and they are also engaged because something is interesting, of course, the results of their learning are going to be much faster. So this is another slide with activities for you. And these are hobbies and everyday activities. Okay, and I put 12 different activities. Now, if we had a lot of time, and if you were sitting together in one classroom, although I think it would be very difficult to have a classroom for 600 students or over 600 students, but I would ask you to work in pairs now and think which of these activities are like cognitively demanding and which are not. So for example, put the words in alphabetical order, not very demanding, very basic. It's good for kids, maybe when they are learning the alphabet. But number 4, prepare 5 questions using those activities and ask your classmates. This is nice, isn't it? Because not only do you practice speaking, but first you have to make your own questions. All right, so if you have students who practice, let's say, present simple, they can ask questions like, how often do you play computer games? How often do you watch films in the cinema? How often do you go shopping with your parents? All right, so this is already using this language in my own questions. It's very interesting. Or number 9, make true and false sentences about yourself using the words. Can your partner guess which are true? So what I do very often is I dictate 3 or 4 sentences to my students, and then they parse if these sentences are true about me, and then they do it in pairs. So they look at this vocabulary and they dictate the sentences to each other. So for example, I could say, I play the guitar once a week. I go shopping every second day. I play computer games once a week. I never chat online. And my students guess which are true, which are not true. This is very interesting. The students love it because it's, you know, guessing and it's talking to your teacher. I'm not saying that some of these activities are worse. I'm saying that some of these activities are lower level activities. And of course, we need to do them. Something like 11, translate these words into your language. Some students like doing that, right? They like to know how to translate. Or 12, explain to your partner the meaning of words he or she doesn't know. Yes, so we need to do these lower level activities, but if you only do such activities, the students will not be making a lot of progress because they need to be able to use those words and phrases in more complex tasks. Okay, what I also like doing is I love working with pictures. And I'll show you in a moment where this picture comes from. I use pictures like my own pictures and images, but I try to find images which are unique or interesting. And so what I do is I ask my students to come up with questions. Okay, so normally when I start working with a class or a group, these are usually the first questions that we get. All right, so what do you see in the picture? What are the people doing? Where was the picture taken? What can you see in the background? How many people are there in the picture? What is the weather like? So they ask these typical questions. And just to explain it to you, I often teach exam groups. I teach students in secondary school, for example, preparing for their final exams, but I used to teach students preparing for first certificate or advanced, and you have to describe a lot of pictures there. That's why I like these activities. But after some time, I say to them, okay, let's forget those usual pictures, all right? Let's think about something else. Some other questions which you can answer, all right? So they work individually or in pairs, depends on what you want. And the questions in red are the actual questions that some of my students came up with. So why is the boy playing in the park? Do you think he has a happy life? What would you like to ask him? Who are the people on the bench? And so most of my students say, yes, the boy has a happy life. He has got 2 cats or 3. He's playing in the park because it's like the middle of holidays. And the people on the bench are just, you know, passers-by, right? They are not his family or anything. Some other students would say, I think the lady maybe is his grandmother, and so on. The point here is that I want my students to use a lot of questions because they don't get to ask a lot of questions normally, but I also want them to be a little bit more creative, to go beyond those usual questions, right? And this is already going from there are 2 people in the picture, which is quite basic, to I think the boy has a happy life. So we go again from the questions which are maybe not so interesting and maybe not so engaging to maybe something more creative and more complex as well, language-wise. Okay, so now I'm only going to be giving you ideas. I've already given you some, and I've got 24 minutes just for ideas and for activities. I hope you will like some of them and you will feel tempted to use some of them. So how these HOTS can be used in the English classroom. As I said before, you need to go from the bottom, right? So you need to start with all those simple activities like define, match, and so on, and then to go to understanding. My feeling is that I try to go to this, higher to understanding quite soon with teenagers, because I find that teenagers are often, maybe not often, teenagers are quickly bored with these activities which seem boring and they have to memorize them only. Yes, and there is nothing more interesting to do. I don't know if you agree with me, but I think with teenagers, this is something that I would happen. Yeah, something that happens with adults. For example, when I sometimes teach adults like to take it slowly. They usually need to have this order in their heads, yes, and they like to understand everything, like every single word. So with adults, I would spend more time before I rush to these more creative activities. But with teenagers, sometimes in order not to make them feel bored, I would hurry, all right, to do something a little bit more creative. So let's have a look at some of these more creative things. Hello, Grzegorz. Okay, so okay, so here again, you have this spread from the course book, right, with a dressing up. What else could you do? What other activities which would require more creativity and more engagement from your students? How could you do that? Okay, let's take a look. So as I said before, the exercises are, or the suggestions for the exercises are given in such a way that we go from the bottom to the top. Categorizing, as I said like 10 minutes ago, is a lovely activity because in categorizing you put those activities or clothes or whatever into categories of your choice, and the students can choose themselves, and there is no correct answer. So basically, they can let their imagination run wild and use the words, of course. Prioritizing. So, for example, you can ask the students to put the items of clothing in the order from those which they wear most often to the ones which they wear least often or maybe never. So probably there will be boys who never wear a tie. Yes, if you teach secondary school kids. Okay, then if we want to be a little bit more creative, right, and more, if we want the students to be more engaged, all right, you can have a little debate or a decision or justification. You can ask the students to choose a perfect outfit for an outdoor concert. So you can give them, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 images. You can show them on the screen or on the computer screen if you teach online, and they work in pairs and they choose which one would be the best for an outdoor concert, which one would be the best for your grandmother's birthday party. Yes, so you decide and you make a decision. And of course, as I said before, designing or role playing is like the ultimate exercise in being engaged and being interested. All right, so for example, you can ask the students to draw or take a photo of their perfect outfit. Okay, and you can easily do that with primary school students too. And during the COVID, the pandemic, when we were all online, some kids, which I taught in a language school, right, primary school kids, they loved this activity because they, dressed up, they stood in front of the camera and they said, yes, I'm wearing this and I'm wearing this. They loved it. Now what we do is I ask them to take a photo. So they have to put, this perfect outfit at home. They have to put it on. They have to take a photo or a selfie, or just put the clothes, on the bed or on the table, take a photo, and then work in pairs and discuss it and show it to each other. That this is my perfect item. Okay, let me just show you some of these categories that my students came up with, because these are their categories, not mine. They came up with how you can divide clothes. All right, so these are their ideas. So of course, summer, winter, autumn, spring, and then they asked me to have this special category like all-time favorite. So I'm sure you know these kids who wear, I don't know, heavy Dr. Martens boots all year round, or their favorite Nike sneakers all year round, no matter what the weather is. Okay, categorization. Special occasions, everyday clothes, school clothes. Male, female, unisex clothes. Clothes which I like, which I don't mind, and which I hate, for example. Clothes for kids, teens, and adults, right? And so on and so on. Very nice exercise. You can do it once or twice. The students will revise the vocabulary on a number of opportunities. Okay, this is another topic, another vocabulary area from Gateway to the World A2. As you can see, you've got countries and words connected with countries. And have a look that these activities, which appear here first, are the lower level activities. It's like matching and repeating the names only, right? The pronunciation. No higher order skills involved, no cognitive thinking involved. So if you wanted to engage your students a bit or give them this extra revision opportunity, ask them to categorize those countries by continents. Countries which are by the sea, in the mountains, neither. Like, I don't know, distance. So how far they are from Ukraine, right? Are they like the neighbors, or maybe quite far, or maybe on other continents? Are they safe or dangerous? Are they famous for holidays, for sport, or for food, or for something else? Okay, categorization always works. This is one of this slightly more engaging activities when it comes to thinking, right? Okay, and another vocabulary area, this is rooms in the house, household objects, and furniture. So here you have quite a long group of these words and phrases. And then you have the usual activities, right? So complete the table, listen and decide. So, you know, as it is typically done in a course book, you have to start from the foundation. Yes, you have to start from remembering and understanding. But if you want to give your students more practice, and if you want to make your students revise this vocabulary in the next lesson or maybe a week later, you can always come up with some other activities. Okay, so this is again a list of some activities for you to think about and to use. For example, you can group these items into at least 3 different categories, of course. Then in exercise 2, you can use your dictionary to add 1 or 2 words to these categories that you have and teach these words to their neighbors. Okay, number 5, write definitions of 3 items. And can your neighbor guess which ones they are? So you also practice relative clauses. All right, so this is something, yeah. Okay, so when it comes to vocabulary learning, as Scott Thornberry says in one of his books, it's not only about repetition, all right, but it's also about cognitive depth. So this is what I'm talking about here. The higher order thinking skills are all about cognitive depth, but also affective depth, so being emotionally engaged, and of course, personalization. Okay. So if you want your students to use the words a little bit in a little bit more complex way, but also personalized way, what you can do is you can ask your students to work on their own first and tell them, okay, people from group A, can you make questions with these 4 words? And people from group B, can you make questions with these 4 words? All right, so what kind of questions could these be? Things like, I don't know, have you got a sofa in your living room? Or have you got a mirror in your room? Have you got a comfortable armchair? Have you got a bath or a shower in your bathroom? Can you see? So what the students have to do is they have to come up with their own questions. And then they work in pairs and they ask each other the questions, which is a lovely activity because the students use vocabulary, they use grammar, they come up with their own questions, they revise. So we have, you know, all those factors which make learning vocabulary easier that Scott Thornberry mentioned. But also we go beyond simple activities like matching and understanding. So I hope that this is clear. Another simple activity which you can do with the words and the course book, and you just choose the words which you want to choose the odd one out. And again, this is a very nice activity because the students' answers may be different from what you expect. And it's fine, all right? Because they need to convince each other and then they need to convince me why the odd one out is a bus driver or a teacher. They would normally say, teacher, a pediatrician is the odd one out because all the other people, teacher, nurse, and bus driver, earn little money. They don't earn a lot. But someone else will say, nah, I would use it differently. Pediatrician, teacher, and nurse okay, are a group, because these are the people who have a big influence on your life. It's fantastic. Even if they do not always express themselves very, very clearly, they are still thinking about these jobs and these concepts. Okay, I once found a very interesting book about guessing also, right? That all those activities in which the students have to guess are very interesting to our minds because we like guessing, yes? And when we guess, we make a lot of connections, right, in our brains, and we think harder about the information. So any activity in which the students have to guess, like they make guesses about what their what their teacher likes or dislikes, or which is the correct answer, are always going to be effective because they are cognitively engaging and they make you think, right? So you develop this higher order thinking skills. Okay, when it comes to grammar, it's pretty much similar. Okay, of course, you have to start with very simple activities like remember, recognize, match, okay? And then, of course, you go towards slightly more complex and complicated ideas like application. So here, write sentences that are true for you, but use the present continuous. I'm sitting in class. My teacher is explaining grammar. My classmates and I are not listening carefully, yeah? And so on and so on. But I would very much encourage you to engage your students into activities, grammatical activities, obviously, in which they have to analyze or explain things, not necessarily using terms like present simple or present continuous, but to explain to you how they really understand it. Okay, so for example, if you asked your students, what is the difference between these two sentences? And when would you say that? Robert Lewandowski plays football, is playing football. You know, students, sometimes they say one is present simple, one is present continuous. I say, yes, I know that. But you tell me when, okay? If you want to make it, maybe take it one step further, you can use images and you can say, right, which image shows Robert Lewandowski plays football and which one is playing? So which one would you use to talk about what you see happening in the picture, and which one, and the other one is about what? And the other one is about his job. But in the picture, he's playing with his daughter. So it really helps because not only does it make your students think about grammatical structures and how they understand grammatical structures, but it also gives you feedback on how they understand. All right, so you as a teacher, you learn quite a lot about how students think about the grammar, even if they describe it to you in Ukrainian. So explain and compare. This is a lovely activity, yeah? What is the difference? What is that horrible howling? Is a dog outside, the dog outside? So do we know this dog or don't we know this dog? Yeah? When I came home from school, all the family had lunch or had lunch. What was first? So I would really encourage you to sometimes a little exercise like this produces better results than a simple activity in which the students just have to use the verb in the right form, because very often they don't even read those sentences, yes, in different activities. I'm going to show you some translation activities. Of course, you will not understand all of them. Our languages are quite similar. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking those structures which are somehow problematic for students of English who speak Polish as their native language. Okay, so for example, biegnę, yes, I ask them, is it I'm running or is it I run? All right, think. Is it something I'm doing right now or is it something I do regularly? What would be the correct equivalent? So biegnę o biegam, yes, I'm running, I run. And I do it quite often. I engage my students in trying to find the equivalents and then explain. So for example, in Polish, there is a word czytam, yes, which can be translated into English as 3 different expressions, verbal expressions. Tenses, actually. I'm reading, I read, I've been reading. Yes, it's a very simple activity. You put it on the board on the basis of the course book, which you've been using, and you just want your students to revise, all right? But you invite them to think, to develop their cognitive skills. Okay, and finally, reading, listening. So how can you develop those higher order thinking skills with students who are A2, A2 plus, maybe A1 plus, maybe B1? What can you do? All right. So of course, we normally start with asking, checking up questions. Like, you know, the typical questions like who, when, what, where, what was happening, and so on and so on, right? So we would normally do some reading comprehension or some listening comprehension, yeah? But then you can take this text from the book a little further. My belief is that if I have a course book and I have a text, it would be wise to use it again and again and again. Okay, so what I do a lot is retelling in your own words. All right, I'll show it to you. Okay, so for example, in Get Involved, A2 plus, there is this text about a boy who was walking along the beach near his home in Florida, and there is this story, right? So what can you do with it? Of course, there are the normal reading comprehension questions, and you can discuss the vocabulary. What do I do in the next lesson? In the next lesson, I tell them, okay, you work in pairs, all right? So there are two people. One person closes the book, and the other tries to retell the story of Billy. Okay? And the person who has got the book checks if everything sort of checks out or gives some hints. So for example, if I was the student, I would say, okay, so one day Billy was walking on the beach when he saw $100 and he took the money. It doesn't have to be word by word. No. What I want is for the students to summarize the story, sort of retell it. You can also ask the students to retell the story, but from his or her perspective. Okay, so you would start like, one day I was walking along the beach near my home in Florida. All right, so the students are still working with the same text, but they are retelling it, trying to rework it from their memory. Also, another thing you can do is you can interview Billy. You can have the volunteer who like sits. You can work in groups of 3 or 4. One is Billy, and you've got 3 or 4 journalists, and the journalists ask him questions like, so where were you when you found the money? Where was the beach? All right, how much money did you find? You've got one text and lots of potential, lots of opportunities, going beyond the text a little bit. In one of those course books, I think it's either Gateway to the World, I think so. There is this lovely live feed of a Comic-Con. All right, so as you can see, again, what can you do with it? You ask the usual comprehension questions and so on and so on. Then you can retell it from a different perspective. So you can have, this is a live feed, and I can retell it from a perspective of a person who was there. So I was at a Comic-Con, and it was great fun. There were, okay? Or you can ask students to imagine that they have a Comic-Con in their school, and they write their own live feed on the basis of this model. Or I think the most creative of these would be the one on top. All right, so you put the students in groups and you ask them, okay, make a plan of a Comic-Con in your school. So you have these ideas here, use the vocabulary, make a plan. Okay, so again, you go beyond the text, the content, you take the vocabulary, you take the grammar, but you also give them slightly more complex tasks, not just reading comprehension questions. Okay, and of course, in the modern books nowadays, you have those strategies, right? Sometimes you have understand, apply, create, critical thinking. I hope that you will see their usefulness now that they are really, really useful and helpful, because what we want our students to do, we don't want simply to give them more language. Yes, we need to give them more complex tasks. So you can have, you know, the same unit with the same vocabulary. You can have a text, but you can use the same vocabulary and you can use the same text twice, 3 times maybe, doing something maybe more complicated every single time you revise it. Okay, so I hope that this is kind of logical. And to sum up, I just wanted to say that HOTS can be practiced with students at any level. They don't have to be B2 or C1. It's enough if they're, you know, A1 plus or A2, and they can already start developing their cognitive thinking. And they can be practiced, of course, as I hope I managed to show you, recycling the same material, right? So the same text, the same grammar, same pictures. And I hope that I managed to show you that those higher order thinking skills helps to develop students, not only linguistically, but also cognitively. The more thinking, the more effort, the better the language is going to be remembered. And I do hope that you have found some of these ideas. They are all practical ideas, and I have done all these activities with my students sometime in the past, or not in such a distant past like yesterday. Thank you very much for your kind attention.